You're listening to Scorched. A raw, real, and unfiltered podcast about drag racing and motorsports. Hosted by the man willing to burn it all down. And now, the man himself, E3xtreme's own Damon Steinke.
Welcome to the inaugural episode of Scorched. For those of you wondering, my name's Damon. I'm going to be your host week after week. We're going to talk about drag racing. We're going to talk about the ins and outs of drag racing. We're going to talk about what really happens in the world of drag racing and what happens behind the scenes in drag racing. We're going to talk to people who live and breathe this every day like I do. We're going to talk to some of the best tuners, drivers, engine builders, suspension experts, power adder experts, fuel injection experts, really on the planet. But why is this different than every other podcast that you may listen to in regards to drag racing? Well, I'll tell you why. Because we aren't beholden to anybody, and we're not afraid to ask the tough questions that piss people off. For those of you that know me, you're well aware that I'm pretty unfiltered most of the time. Not worried about pissing people off. Not worried about asking tough questions that make people cringe. And not worried about voicing my opinion when I think, well, that's just fucked up. So, obviously, as you can tell, this is kind of new to me. Obviously, you guys have maybe seen me from Facebook Live or seen me at the track doing photography, whatever it may be, and I decided we're going to venture into podcasting. I've always got something to say. Whether you want to listen or not, I'll let you make that decision. So on this first episode, really all I want to do is introduce you to myself, what we're going to be doing, what we're going to be talking about, kind of get a feel for everything. But I would be remiss if I didn't take a second to thank those who support us. Garrett Turbos, Nitrous Outlet, Menser Motorsports, Classic Graphics, and MacFab Beadlocks. Without those companies, I wouldn't be doing this. I'd be working some white-collar 9-to-5 job. So, always make sure to support those who support our industry, because it does make a difference. So there's my pitch for the day. And I will also ask you that to bear with me. This is my first episode, and I'll be truthful with you. I recorded an episode last night. It sucked. I deleted it. So, this is a work in progress, just like it was when I started photography, just like it was pretty much when you start any new job. There's going to be learning curves. So, like I ask, bear with me. My material's not going to be PG most of the time. There's going to be times when I have guests on that it'll be a little bit more scaled back than what you may be used to from me. But most of the time, you're going to get what you're used to seeing, whether it's at the racetrack or on social media or during our phone conversations if you're somebody that I talk to on a regular basis. I have talked to numerous people within our industry that are excited to be guests on the show. So we're going to try to bring you content at least once a week. And if you enjoy the content that we bring you, hit the subscribe button. Keep coming back. Check it out. I think you're going to enjoy it. I think you're going to have a completely different perspective on drag racing, and I think you're going to learn a lot. With that said, when I have guests on, they're not going to know what exactly we're talking about ahead of time. A lot of the guests, it will be just a conversation format. We're going to sit down. We're going to talk about life. We're going to talk about things at the drag strip. The things that you don't, as a fan, necessarily ever get to see. I think it's important to bring people into our sport that may be new to it, or may be long-term fans that just don't ever have the access to the people in the pits and to see what I see the 45 plus weeks a year that I'm at the racetrack. I think it's important for you guys to be able to see and understand how much work goes into being a top-tier driver or a promoter or a tuner or a manufacturer. And on the manufacturing side, we're going to do podcasts from Menser Motorsports, from MacFab Beadlocks. I'm going to have Tim from Garrett as a guest. I will have Scott from Classic Graphics as a guest, or Dave Vassar from Nitrous Outlet as a guest, and numerous others that I have already spoken to and mentioned. I know there's a lot of tuners out there that would be more than happy to sit down and talk, and we're not going to necessarily talk about how to tune your car. We're going to talk about what really goes into the thought process of tuning and everything else outside of maybe the actual physical aspect of typing on the keyboard. That'll be fun. A little bit about me, if you don't know. I've been around drag racing since the early 90s, probably about 1990. I've served as a car owner, a driver, a crew guy. I've been on the media side of it as a photographer and a journalist. I've worked with promoters. I've worked with track owners, drivers. I've covered most aspects of this sport in some way or another, or been involved some way or another in this sport for the better part of 30 years. E3 was started in 2014 with my business partner Ellen Eschenbacher, who, if you're in drag racing, you know exactly who Ellen is. And great news, she will be a guest on the show. She'll actually be a regular guest on the show. So you'll definitely want to tune in for that, because the conversations that Ellen and I have are conversations that a lot of other people never really get the chance to have or see or hear. So that's a little bit about my drag racing background. I do this full time. My job is to be a journalist and a photographer. I'm also on the other side of the industry, which is the custom car and car audio lifted truck side of the industry. So sometimes we're going to talk about that stuff too, because I think it's just as important as drag racing is to give them the attention that they rightfully deserve. If you've ever been to a high-end car show, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars for some of these cars and trucks, and some of them are just absolute pieces of art. So we're going to get into some of that too. What else are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the business side of motorsports. And for those of you wondering, well, what kind of background does he have to justify talking about any business? Well, I joke around because one of my other fellow photographers at the drag strip is also a very well-educated button smashers. What I call us is that we are overeducated button pushers. I happen to have my master's degree, my MBA, with a concentration in finance. I've been a business owner. I've worked in corporate America, and I've worked in retail America and pretty much everywhere else. We have worked with numerous companies, promoters, track owners on the business side of marketing and branding. And let's be honest, Ellen and I created something 6 years ago that was not prevalent within our industry, and that's digital branding. 6-7 years ago, you didn't see photographers putting logos on every single photo that they captured at a racetrack. Now that's all you see. We were the ones to start that. And we continue to carry on that tradition because we are better at it than anybody else is. The facts are the facts. I am not going to be the most modest person in the world. So if you're looking for modesty and unicorns and rainbows, there's plenty of other bullshit podcasts that you could tune into to get that. But that's not what this is. This is about bringing you real, unfiltered, adult, tell it like it is, for what it is type of content. I'm not going to sit here and BS our audience into believing that everything within the motorsports industry is kittens and rainbows and that everybody gets along and that everybody likes each other and all that crap. It's not. It's never been like that, and it's never going to be like that. But, like I said, if you want real, unfiltered talk about the industry, then this is definitely the place that you want to come to. Our shows aren't scripted. As you can tell, I'm just kind of winging it at this point. And that'll be the same when we have guests on. The guests won't get their questions ahead of time. It won't be scripted. They won't know what we're going to talk about. We're just going to wing it. It may not be the most professional studio or things like that, but I still take pride in the content that we create, and we strive to create better content than anybody else. And that's one of the reasons that we're doing this. As we go along in this process, we will continue to grow. We will continue to expand how we do our podcasts, the production level of them, things of that nature. I'm going to do my best to give you guys content worth listening to every week on top of all the other content that we already create, whether that's photography or articles, whatever it may be. We're going to continue to crank out content that is worth your time because let's face it, I don't want to waste your time. You may not like this stuff. You may want the kitties and rainbows crap, and that's perfectly fine. But give it a chance. Stick with me, and I promise you, it'll certainly be entertaining to say the least. I'm looking forward to growing this, and I'm looking forward to talking about whatever, comes about. We're going to have photographers on here. Obviously, this is a content creation type of deal. I'm in the content creation business. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to create content. We're going to talk to content creators, photographers, and videographers throughout the industry. We're going to have sessions where we talk about gear and editing and what it's like to be trackside for 12 hours a day for 4 days straight and go back to your hotel and, spend hours working on content and getting very little sleep and even less food to eat or anything else, and trying to bring awareness and perspective to everybody in the industry regarding what it takes to create content and what it takes to make drag racing look the way that it does. So, I think, in my mind, that we are going to have a good thing going here. I think if you guys are willing to stick with it, share it, tell your friends about it. I think this has got the opportunity to be a great thing for not only you, the viewers and listeners of this show, but for me, for the drivers and crew chiefs and tuners, manufacturers and content creators that we have on the show. The objective is to grow the sport. I personally believe that drag racing is the most diverse and exciting sport in the world. We have drivers that start at 6 years old, people who still drive well into their 80s. It's really the only sport where men and women compete on the exact same level, whether amateur or professional, because all that matters is the car at that point, the car and the driver. It's fun. It tickles all the senses when you're at the drag strip. If you've never been, you really, really need to go. And by following our show, you're going to learn why you need to go. You're going to learn why it's exciting, why it's fun, why the smells and the sounds of burnouts and the ground rumbling underneath you, and it's just something that is unexplainable, but we're going to do our best to bring you in and take you along for a hell of a ride. If you've made it through this long, all I can say is thank you. Like I said, this is our inaugural show. We're going to try to do this at least once a week. Obviously, I want to work on the production value. And like I said, I don't want to waste your time. If there are people that you think would be a good interview, let me know. If there's something that you want us to talk about, let me know. I'm always open to suggestions and ideas. Doesn't mean I'll take them or do anything with them, but I'm always open to them. And if they're good, you can pretty well bet that you're probably going to see something regarding it somewhere down the road. And as you can see on our table here, I have requested that everybody that I know in the industry start sending in stickers and decals from their businesses, or even random things. I don't really care. It's going to get stuck to the table. We have 2 tables, and once we get more production gear, you will see both tables, and we hope to have both tables completely covered by the end of the year. Looking forward to that, because I always want to support all the people who support the drag racing industry. So, with that said, I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you. I love you guys all for hanging in this long. Take care.
You've been listening to Scorched. Raw, real, and unfiltered. Join us next time when Damon scorches it all again to find previous episodes, news, commentary, and event coverage. Head to E3xtreme. There is no one better.